Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 226 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Saturday morning spread. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. Mark, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing well, ready for the Underwear Olympics to start here soon. The Combine starting any day. I forget what day the actual events start. I think it's either today or tomorrow, but they've been out there for a couple days and I'm officially in nerd mode, reading all these articles and consuming so much content about these players that it eventually will just wash out.
Yeah, it starts this afternoon, I believe. You'll see, I think it's edge rusher and linebacker drills are the first ones up today. So this is the last draft ranking show we'll have to do without the benefit of combine measurements. Although it seems like increasingly none of the top players ever do the drills anymore anyways. The typical approach is like gain weight for the combine so you get bigger measurables and then lose it and do the drills at your pro day. So I increasingly feel like I discount the athletic testing more and more every year, but I do really value the measurables that we finally get.
Yeah, I only really care about the combine for RAS scores, and the only reason I really care about RAS scores, as Shane knows, is so I can do some comps, so I can find some comparisons, and the RAS website gives you some fun tools to compare people with that. So that's my favorite part of the combine, my favorite part of what I'm able to do once the combine results are here. I try not to overhaul opinions that I had on players going into the combine. It's mostly, in my opinion, good for confirmation bias. I think if a player you like explodes, then, maybe bump them up even more and like them even more. If a player you already were out on maybe has some concerning numbers specific for their position, maybe even more reason to strengthen that position of being a little bit out on a guy. I'm less often going to take a guy that I loved, and if he doesn't have a good combine, be out on them, or take a guy that I hated, and if they had a great combine, all of a sudden I'm all in. That I try to stay away from that kind of.
Yeah, the combine is confirmation bias at its finest.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, we are going to dive into our tight end rankings. We went tight ends today because it's probably the position that we have outside of quarterbacks that is least important, least impacted by the combine. So we're going to dive into our top 5 tight end rankings. Just a brief note, if I sound terrible, I'm sick. So I'm going to try to limit coughing into the mic. If you're watching, you might see me blowing my nose slightly off camera a lot today, but not to gross you out, but we're going to power through and get these tight ends ranked. And so like we did last week, we're going to go 1 to 5. Then we will give an honorable mention shout out at the end and sort of talk about the Eagles positions. Obviously the Eagles need tight ends. They have 0 tight ends under contract heading into next year. So I think it's a position that is very much in play pending what they do in free agency. So let's go to number 1. We both have the same guy at number 1. It's Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. I'll take the lead on Sadiq. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, committed to Oregon. He played there for 3 seasons, but he really broke out in 2025 with 51 catches for 560 yards and 8 touchdowns, which did lead all FBS tight ends. Now, again, these measurables are maybe not confirmed because of the combine, but I'm going to give him anyways. 6'3", 245 pounds, which is 21st and 24th percentile, respectively, just over 21 years old on draft night. He aligned for 56% of his snaps in the slot and 30% of his snaps in line, 12% out wide. In 2025, he had 1.88 yards per route run, 5.1 yards after the catch per reception, and 6 drops, which was a 12.5% drop rate. Strengths for Sadiq. I think he's a sudden twitchy mover. He's a guy that can generate separation in small spaces. So he can make cuts out of routes, get open. He also has good straight line speed. He's a guy that I am interested to see what he runs at the combine if he runs, because I think it'll be pretty good. He's good with the ball in his hands, transitions from receiver to runner quickly. And he had a 19% missed tackle forced rate this season. So he is a yak threat. He adjusts well to the ball in the air, and he uses his body well to shield defenders away from the ball at the catch point. He's obviously a red zone threat, and all you got to do is look at the touchdown numbers. 8 touchdowns this year, led all FBS tight ends. So he's a guy you can target in the red zone, despite the fact he's not like a huge mismatched body type. He's versatile in alignment. He primarily ran his routes from the slot, but he also ran routes in line, so you could use him to generate some mismatches. And this is going to be the thing, weaknesses. This is the thing I'm going to talk about with a lot of tight ends. But he has questionable inline blocking ability. And that's going to limit an NFL team's ability to truly use him in line. He needs to develop more as a blocker so he doesn't just end up being a big slot receiver. He's too grabby as a blocker. He's going to get flagged for a lot of holdings. And generally, he has really good hands, but he also had some routine throws that turned into drops. So I don't know if it's just a concentration drop thing. He telegraphs his routes at times. There's nuances of route running he could improve, his shoulder fakes and things. He is better against man coverage than he is against zone. Against man, he can make breaks, snap off routes, and get open. But against zone, he doesn't always read out the coverage and settle down into the proper throwing lanes. And he's a one-year breakout performer. Now, I'm not going to dock him for that since he's 21 years old, the way I will other people that are like 24 in their 6th year of college football. But he only has 1 year of good production. And then he is going to be a little bit undersized. It contributes to his blocking struggles and also may cause some problems for him as a route runner against like bigger slots.
Yeah, I'm a little lower on Sadiq, I would say overall than a lot of people are. This is a guy who you will see in a lot of top 15 to top 20 rankings for people out there. He actually is a guy who didn't make a first round grade for me. So he's going to be a day 2 grade for me, a second round grade, and outside of my top 30. He did have a pretty high drop rate this year, and when you give me a high drop rate combined with 1 year of production, and that year of production is not really close to being in line with what we're used to from elite tight end prospects. There's a chance, and I've said this to some of my friends who are a little higher on Sadiq, but there's a chance that I'm maybe punishing Sadiq for not being the elite tight ends of the last couple years in the draft. But when I'm going to pick a guy at tight end in the top 15 to 20, I'm going to want him to be in that Bowers, Warren, or even Pitts and Loveland tier of tight ends. And to me, Sadiq is a significant drop down from that. But you made me guess where I think he will get drafted. I think he probably does go. I think Denver's probably a floor for him if you look at where they're drafting. And I know Tampa is a team that's been connected to him, and there's been a few others in the teens. But this is a guy who is expected to tear apart the combine this week. He was number 11 on Feldman's Freaks list last year, and he's actually number 1 on Feldman's list of who's going to tear apart the combine. Last summer, he vertical jumped 41.5 inches, bench pressed 435 pounds, power clean 365, while weighing only 255 pounds. He's actually going to be a little lighter than that at the combines. People think he's going to go even higher on the vertical and have some crazy speed and agility numbers. I'm not saying looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. I'm not saying that at all. He still had 51 catches, 560 yards. I do think he's one of those guys where the traits are so much more tantalizing than the film, in my opinion.
All right. So that's Kenyon Sadiq. Let's go to our number 2s, and we have different guys at number 2. Let's go with your number 2, Mark. You have Michael Trigg at 2. I have him at 3. So talk to me about Michael Trigg.
I love this guy. This is a guarantee to be a helmet sticker, my guy type of guy. I love him. I'm absolutely tantalized by the upside here. 6'4", 240, redshirt senior. Bizarre path. No way around it. He started at Alabama. He actually got kicked off the teams for disciplinary reasons. Went to USC as a freshman, stayed there for a year, went to Ole Miss for 2 years, didn't play much, and then has finally found a spot and broke out a little bit these last 2 years at Baylor. At his first 3 stops, you would get, I've actually heard this name for a while. He was a high recruit. You would get these spring game and training camp videos of him mossing people and him making insane one-handed catches. People knew he was a freak early on. It's how he ended up at Bama and then USC. But depth or personal issues halted that from ever being shown in game, really, outside of a few freak plays over his first 3 years. But over his 2 years at Baylor, he's really shined and shown the potential everyone knew he had. Catching 80 balls for 1,100 yards and almost 14 yards per catch with 9 touchdowns. He's a real yak threat at tight end. That was even better in 2025 than 2024. There was a big jump from 24 to 25. He caught 50 balls for 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. He actually had a pretty similar season this year to Sadiq. But I fell in love with Trigg all the way back in week 1 against Auburn when he had arguably his best game of the year. You could say the Kansas State game as well, but he scored a touchdown in this one. And you could say, I think, in my opinion, his game against Auburn or K-State, I'll put up there in terms of one game tape against any tight end in this class. He had 7 catches for 199 yards in that game. He had 8 catches for 155 against K-State. It's a long, rangy tight end. He had rare arm length, good speed. He moves like a big wide out, surprising foot quickness. I think he pretty fluid transition from run to run after catch. Wins vertically against line. The reason I love him so much is because I do think he's kind of a mismatch nightmare where he's going to take your linebacker up the seam and he's going to win vertically, but he's also going to overwhelm defensive backs with size. He's got incredible high point talent and massive, massive hands. He's become a living nightmare for man defenders in the red zone. Ricochets off defenders well to keep run after the catch going. He's not a good blocker, but he is an able and willing blocker to wall off guys and stay connected. Needs to improve as a route runner, but I think we already saw that from 24 to 25, where he took that step. I think Trigg's a guy who should test very well athletically, but the most important part of his combine may be the interview process. Questions linger about maturity, commitment, bounce between 4 programs in 5 seasons without truly breaking through until year 5, including Nick Saban kicking him off of a football team. I'm sure that's something people are going to want kind of answers on, even if it was a long time ago. And if he can prove he has changed and grown up, I think the sky's the limit.
Yeah, he's got a lot of injury history, too. He had a knee injury in 2021 at USC. It didn't end up requiring surgery, but it's there. He broke his collarbone in 2022, which is maybe not something you're super worried about because that's not like his collarbone is prone to break. Everybody's collarbone is prone to breaking. So maybe you write that one off as bad luck. But in 2023, he only played in 3 games and then left the team, and no official reason was ever given by anybody. Maybe he was injured. Maybe he just decided he was done. Maybe he got kicked off. Like, we don't really know.
I think it was, I don't know if it was kicked off or left, but I think it was disciplinary from what I remember.
Yeah. So when you got a guy that leaves Alabama under disciplinary reasons and then leaves Ole Miss 3 years later, I think I've got him with a medical and a character red flag. So like you said, interviews are going to be really important for him. But, the player on the field, he does, when he wants to, he's a good route runner. I think he has inconsistent effort at times, but he is a fluid route runner. He can high point the ball well. He's an elite vertical threat. His average depth of target was 11.3 yards. So he can eat cushion up quickly up the seam. I mostly just think he's a slot receiver, though, a big slot. 70% of his snaps were in the slot. I think he's not a good blocker. He's underdeveloped, technically low mass. He does have some good blocks on film, but it's very inconsistent. So I put a 3rd round grade on him, and I called him a power slot, like a move/flex tight end in a vertical style offense. That's what I think is going to be the best fit for him.
This has absolutely nothing to do with tight end, but breaking news on a trade. The Titans have agreed to trade T'Vondre Sweat, who's actually a pretty good player, to the Jets for Jermaine Johnson.
Okay.
Fun swap of names that were pretty highly drafted pretty recently.
All right. Let's keep rolling then. So Trigg was your number 2, my number 3. I'll talk about my number 2. He's number 4 for you. It's Max Clare out of Ohio State via Purdue. He was a 3-star recruit, committed to Purdue. He redshirted in 2022, and then he played 5 games in 2023 before he sustained an ankle injury, and then he broke out in 2024. He's Purdue's leading receiver in 2024, 51 catches, 85 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And then he transferred to Ohio State for the 2025 season, and his production kind of fell off. 43 catches, 448 yards, 2 touchdowns. He is 6'5", which is 63rd percentile height, 243 pounds, 19th percentile, about 22 and a half years old come draft night. He actually lined up in line for the majority of his snaps. 42% in line, 41% slot, 14% out wide. He had 1.71 yards per route run and 4.9 yards after the catch per reception with only 2 drops, which is a 4.7% drop rate. And so he has proven receiving productions. He's got 2 straight years in 2 different programs with good receiving totals combined for over 1,100 yards across the last 2 seasons. He is a smooth route runner. He understands how to use the defender's leverage against him to create separation at the break point. I will say he's overly handsy at the top of his route stems at times, but generally you're going to get away with that at the NFL level. I think you're not going to get a lot of OPI calls. So I think he can get away with that. He can make tough catches in traffic. He's got the speed to threaten vertically up the seam. He's got the alignment versatility. He played more in line than anybody we've talked about so far, but he also played in the slot. And so he's got good size at 63rd percentile height. He is undersized for his, underweight for his height at 19th percentile, but you could potentially put on some weight if you needed him to be able to block better in line. And maybe he does need that because he struggles as an inline blocker. Often it's just bigger defenders overwhelm him. He needs to add functional strength and mass to be able to survive in the trenches. He is a good blocker on the move, though. Like if you want to motion him and kick out with him on the backside of plays or things like that, you can use him in that way. You can motion him and get him out on the edge leading for your running back. So he's good on the move. He's just not good firing out of the trenches to take on a defensive end. I think he's a little stiff in his movements, and that impacts his blocking at time. But it also impacts his ability to control his body at the catch point. And so we talked about with Sadiq how he does a really good job of shielding defenders off with his body. I think that's suboptimal with Max Clare. So I have a 2nd round grade on him. I think he's going to work best as a move tight end. But I do think if he puts on some weight and strength, he is a guy that could survive a little bit more just lining up in line. So that's Max Clare. I've got him at 2. You have him at 4. What are your thoughts on Clare?
Yeah, I think he's probably more of a receiver than a blocker in the NFL, and I don't think he's that dynamic with crazy high upside. I think he's probably a pretty good bet to be a solid player, though. I'm just not in love with the upside, I guess. But I do have a 3rd round grade on him, and he's my last 3rd round grade, so I have 2 2nd round grades and then 2 3rd round grades of my top 4, and then there's a drop off.
Yeah. All right. Got a comment here from Yakko asking, after OJ Howard, how concerned should we be with physical freak tight ends that don't have elite production to match? I mean, I think the problem with tight ends is tight end is just a different position in college than it is in the NFL. I think it's one of the hardest positions to project because you end up with athletic tight ends in college and they're just simply not asked to block because they're too good with the ball in their hands. And so you're going to hear me, every guy in my top 5, I think I'm going to talk about a weakness of his is blocking. And that's a big deal for a tight end. So tight end is one of those where there just aren't many guys that come out that I think are ready to play in the NFL as a rookie. And so you've got to make do with what traits they have and try to get somebody that you can coach up in the rest of it.
And this is maybe a giveaway for the end of the show when we're going to Eagle-centric it. I'm good on going with a tight end in the draft. In my opinion, that is a free agency position or a Goddard position this year for the Eagles, in my personal preference.
Yeah, we got a comment here from Anthony that says, it's been a while since I can remember the Eagles going into a draft with such obvious needs. But to be fair, free agency hasn't happened yet. So they're not going to walk into the draft with no tight ends on the roster. Howie does a really good job of filling it out, so he's not pigeonholed into taking a specific guy in the 1st round. So, okay, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to your number 3 is my number 4. It's Eli Stowers. Talk to me about him, Mark.
Stowers is kind of, I kind of look at him again, receiver, not a blocker. Former 4-star quarterback recruit. He blossomed as a receiver after switching positions, 6'4", 235. Looks to me more like a big wideout than an inline tight end. At 6'4", 235, he's a former Texas 6A state high jump champion. A pretty rare athlete. He was number 15 on Feldman's Freaks list after broad jumping 11.3 and vertical jumping 39 inches. He also power cleaned 360 pounds, and there's rumors that people think he's going to jump over 40 inches at the scouting combine. This is a guy who transferred from New Mexico State, or actually from Texas A&M to New Mexico State, then to Vanderbilt. And in the last 2 years, he has caught 111 balls for 1,407 yards and 9 touchdowns at Vandy. He took a step this year from last year, even if he was a little less explosive. This is a guy who I definitely expect to be an NFL receiver level tight end. It's just, is he worth it all comes down to like the same conversation with all these guys where it's just like, how much do you believe in the receiving and how special do you think the receiving can be? Because it's all he's bringing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you sit here and look at his ability to block. And again, it's something we've talked about. He's going to have elite athleticism, smooth route runner. It's the same profile that we've sat here and given. I do think he especially is good at sitting down in the soft spots of zone. He was a former quarterback, and so I think that serves him well in that regard. But he's super light, 7th percentile weight. He is physically not capable of blocking in line. He just can't. And he can be bumped off his routes too by physical defenders. So the gap between his pass catching ability and his blocking limitations makes him a tricky evaluation because, yeah, he's a good receiver, but if that's all he can do, there's actual receivers you can probably draft that are better at it than he is. And so that's always my thing with tight ends. If you can't block at all, if I can't threaten to line you up in line and block with you, then teams are just going to match you with nickel personnel, at which point I'm better off just having a receiver instead of a tight end, an actual receiver instead of a receiver masquerading as a tight end. So there's a way these guys can work. I mean, Harold Fannin Jr. had a good season last year, and I was way out on him too. And so it can work, but generally I'm just not interested in this type of tight end personally.
Fannin was a lot more productive than any of these guys too in the college level.
Yeah.
So he had proven it a little bit more. And just to be fair, like, think Trigg, Stowers, and Claire are worth the shot on day 2, are worth the chance that you take on. Maybe all those guys are not much of blockers, but I do think all 3 guys have enough upside to convince yourself on that they can be used as a receiver and that it can work like Fannin, like Shane just said. But it's besides that, after those 4 guys, I think there's a lot of names being thrown out there as Eagles targets on day 2 that it would, to me, I wouldn't want to rely on those guys early on. There's a good question from Daniel. There's a couple good questions in the comments, but honestly, the real question is how many early round tight ends have been worth that value? Seems like every year a 4th, 5th round tight end or performs a 2nd rounder. I will say the last 3 tight ends that were drafted at a high price have all lived up and more so to that. Yeah. Obviously, Bowers became the best tight end in the NFL his rookie year. And then Tyler Warren was arguably the best tight end in the NFL for the first half of the year. You could argue Colston Loveland was the best tight end in the second half of the year in the top 3. He really, really broke out as the season went on, and Warren was great, and Bowers has been great. I think that was a true narrative for a long time where you could find your Kittle or Laporta later on and on day 2 or whatever, and maybe not take him in round 1. But I think that that's kind of flipped a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to go try to find Tyler Warren from my profile last year. Good run blocker. Has the size and strength to be elite if he can iron out some technical deficiencies. Colston Loveland. Limitations as a blocker. He's a willing blocker, but he doesn't handle inline blocking responsibilities well. He can block better from the slot. It's like both of those guys I noted had the ability to be run blockers. And so I think that's a big part of it. I was going to try to find my Brock Bowers report and see what I said about him as a blocker. Was that 2024?
Yeah.
2024. Brock Bowers, average strength as a blocker. He's very willing, but limited in effectiveness by his frame. You can compare that to what I've been saying about some of these guys. And I think specifically for the Eagles, assuming A.J. Brown's going to be here. If you got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, I don't need a tight end that's a big-time receiving threat. I need a guy that can block, and he can catch the ball when it hits him in the hands. You don't have to be a great route runner. We've got guys to draw that attention. I don't need a guy that's going to get 1,000 yards a year. I need a guy that can just catch the ball when he's wide open because we're running play action and we're thinking he's a blocker and those sorts of things. So I'm with Anthony. I just want a tight end that can block, and we can figure the rest of it out later. Okay, let's keep rolling. Number 5, I have Jack Indries out of Texas via California. He was a 3-star recruit who walked on at Cal, despite the fact he had 17 scholarship offers elsewhere. He was a freshman All-American in 2023, and then he broke out in 2024 with 623 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then he transferred to Texas, and his production took a step back. It was the worst production year of his career, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns. He is 6'4", which is 41st percentile, 240 pounds, which is 13th percentile, 22 and a half years old. He aligned in line for 65% of his snaps, in the slot for 26%, out wide for 9%. He had 1.08 yards per route run, 5.2 yards after the catch per reception, a 7% missed tackle forced rate, and 0 drops in 2025. He had 1 drop in 2024. So over those 2 years combined, that's a 1.3% drop rate. So obviously he's got good hands. As a freshman, he had a 10.3% drop rate, then only 1.3 over the last 2 years of his career. So there's big improvement there. I like to see a guy have a weakness as a freshman that you visibly see growth on throughout the rest of his career. He's a good route runner. I think he understands how to settle up against zone coverage really well. He's got good spatial awareness, and he'll settle into those throwing windows. And he's spent a lot of time lined up in line, which, again, is rare in this class. He is a durable player. He's played a lot of snaps over the 3 years, and he's never missed time. And I think he is a plus blocker on the move. He does a good job as a motion blocker, as a kick-out guy, as a puller. He can do all of those things. However, he is undersized. He is going to struggle to hold the point of attack against edge rushers as an inline blocker. You're probably not going to leave him on an island against an edge on the backside of a run play. He has limited burst after the catch, which limits his yards after catch potential. And I think he struggles to separate consistently against man coverage. So overall, I've got a 3rd round grade on Indries. What are your thoughts on him?
He's kind of just in the mix of a lot of, after my top 4, I have about 5 names that could have either went 5th or as honorable mention. He's one of them. It's kind of, we'll get, I'll list all the names that I could have thrown in when we get to that time.
All right. So that's my top 5. Who's your top 5, or who's your number 5, Mark?
I should have looked up the pronunciation to this. It's Justin, either Joly or Jolly, Joly. I'm guessing Joly. Justin Joly, 6'3", 250. Incredibly strong hands with an impressive catch radius. Good route runner. Good at recognizing zone defense and reading leverage to settle and exploit soft zones. He lines up all over a formation. He adds as a move blocker in the run game. I think he's a surprisingly good pass protector, but he's a former 2-star recruit. He transferred from UConn to NC State. He set career highs this past season in catches with 49 and touchdowns with 7, but didn't create the same explosive impacts from 2024 when he averaged nearly 15 and a half yards per catch. He was a first-team All-ACC performer, and he became more of a security blanket this year in an NC State offense that was underwhelming, and CJ Bailey, a quarterback, had a disappointing season, but he is a red zone threat. He's had 11 touchdowns in the last 2 years. Good leaper, has some basketball background, so good body control in terms of his leaping and leaning and adjusting to the throw. It needs to get stronger to improve as a blocker and clean up that pad level, and he is a little undersized, which hurts those chances up.
Yeah. All right. And then we'll talk honorable mentions. My honorable mention is, by the way, it is Joly, it looks like.
Joly, that makes sense. Yeah.
My honorable mention is Joe Royer. Graduated from Cincinnati after going to Ohio. So he's a 4-star recruit who committed to Ohio State, had limited usage over his first 3 seasons. Then he transferred to Cincinnati, where he broke Travis Kelce's single season record for receptions in 2024 with 50.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Support for the Fans First Sports Network comes from Hyper Natural Style. Men's Journal calls it the best men's polo shirt of 2024. Hyper Natural offers polos, tees, and button-ups that deliver unmatched comfort and style. Hyper Natural is a new generation of clean bio-performance clothing that reduces impact on the planet as well as your own health. Hyper Natural created the first ever shirts made from jade stone and crab shells. Supreme natural comfort and cooling performance without harmful chemicals and plastic polyester. Visit hypernaturalstyle.com and receive 20% off at checkout using promo code FFSN. That's hypernaturalstyle.com using FFSN. Thank you for your support.
He had 521 and 416 yards in his 2 years at Cincinnati with 7 total touchdowns. He is 6'5", which is 63rd percentile, 250 pounds, which is 38th percentile. He's 23 years old. He spent 46% of his snaps in line and 49% in the slot, with the remainder coming out wide. 1.54 yards per route run, 5.9 yards after the catch per reception, and a 13.8% missed tackle force rate. He only had 2 drops over the last 2 years, which is a 2.5% drop rate. He is your prototypical tight end frame. He's got a big catch radius, reliable hands. He's a strong hands catcher. Does a good job of plucking the ball out of the air, extending his arms. I think he's got good spatial awareness against zone coverage, and he uses his frame really well when working up the seam and when down near the goal line. He fights through contact at the top of routes. He's a physical player. And most importantly, and this is where he's different than a lot of guys we've talked about, he can line up in line and block. He has the effort and the physicality to do that in a way that most guys in this class simply don't. And so I wanted to mention him. Now, he does need to clean up his pad level as a blocker to be able to really thrive against edge defenders. He could also add some mass and functional strength, but overall, if you had to put this guy in line and let him work against edges, this is the guy that we've talked out of everyone we've talked about that's most likely to pull that off as a rookie. He does have limited top end burst. He's going to struggle to get separation vertically. He's not the best route runner. He's not great after the catch. He's more of a fall forward guy than a create yards guy. But this is the type of guy that I would be interested in for the Eagles with a day 3 pick. I've got a 4th round grade on him. I think he is an inline tight end that fits best in like a play action heavy offense. And I think that's what the Eagles are moving to. So if you told me the Eagles were going to take a tight end on day 3, you can sign me up for Joe Royer. I would be interested to see him in Eagles green.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the honorable mention names that I have. The name I'll throw out there is Tanner Koziol. He's 6'6", 245, purely a receiver, will not block in the NFL. Long, angular pass catcher, great catch radius, 74 catches for 727 yards on only 94 targets this year. He's really, really efficient with his targets. I had 6 touchdowns. Last year, he had even a better year. In one less game, he had 94 catches for 840 yards and 8 touchdowns. He went from Ball State to Louisville, finished up at Houston. Needs more muscle mass and general play strength, and it's far too easy to kind of reroute his release. He lacks some suddenness and burst getting in and out of turns. But if we're talking about a guy who maybe there's some fan-in similarities to, there might be some with Koziol kind of playing at a lower level. Not that Houston's a lower level, but before that, and then having so much production without maybe being able to do a lot else besides just be a receiver. So maybe if you're looking for the fan-in of this year, maybe it's Koziol.
All right. So there you have it. My top 5 is Kenyon Sadiq, Max Clare, Michael Trigg, Eli Stowers, and Jack Indries. For Mark, it is Kenyon Sadiq, Michael Trigg, Eli Stowers, Max Clare, and then Justin Jolie. So you lean forward. Were you about to say something?
Did you have Sadiq as a first-round grade for you?
I did, yeah. Back into the first. I would not be happy if the Eagles took him at 23, but yeah. I did have a first-round grade on him. But he's one that, like, He's one that I can tell when I'm watching it, it's kind of on the fringe for me. And so generally when I've got some of those, I tend to put them up on the top end. And when I come back through and restack my board, sometimes I bump him down. So I'm not going to guarantee he will end with a first round grade for me, but that's where I have him right now, is just kind of like fringe first round.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then we kind of talked along the way about where the Eagles are at with the tight end position. Obviously, nobody under contract right now. The Eagles could save a lot of money, a lot of dead cap if they were to extend Dallas Goedert. They could avoid that $20 million in dead cap that's going to accelerate onto this year's. I think they can, at least. There's been some conflicting reports about how they structured this contract, but they could extend him and maybe avoid some of that. They've got Grant Calcaterra is an expiring free agent, and I don't see them bringing him back. I thought they would because the staff seems to like him, but after hearing Howie talk, that seems unlikely. So any overall thoughts you want to give about the tight end position for the Eagles before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think I said this last year, and I was never I always felt for years that Goddard got a little overrated by our fan base. And, people I thought would be like, oh, it's top 5 tight end. And I was always like, no, he's not. But I think somehow it's swung the other way since winning a Super Bowl and a playoff run that he was great in. Because I feel like last offseason, people were just like, oh, he's gone, whatever. People just accepted in March that he was gone and that there was nothing we could do about it. And then we kept him, and he was the only part of the offense that worked and that stayed afloat. This is something I was complaining about the other day. Greg Rosenthal puts out his top 100, top 101 free agents. He had Dallas Goedert 80, which is low in my opinion. But the reason that it seems low especially is let's talk about some guys who landed above Dallas Goedert on this tight end free agency list from Greg Rosenthal. Cade Otton was top 20, whereas Goddard was 80. Kyle Pitts was top 20, whereas Goddard is 80. Isaiah Likely was top 20, whereas Goddard.
I can see that one.
Yeah, he's young. There's some upside. Same with Chiga Kwong, who's 36 on his list. Travis Kelce is 53 on his list. And then Charlie Kohler is 69 above Dallas Goedert on this list of free agents. If we're saying Dallas Goedert isn't going to be that expensive, there is no reason to not just keep Dallas Goedert. If he's not going to be more expensive than Pitts and Otton and Likely and Okonkwo, then keep Dallas Goedert. It shouldn't even be a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas Goedert, here's his receiving yardage over the last several years, keeping in mind he plays in a tremendous run-first offense. 2019, 607. 2020, 524. 2021, 830. 2022, 702. 2023, 592. 2024, 496. 2025, 591. Dallas Goedert has been a productive player. I'm one of those guys that was pushing the Dallas Goedert's a top 5 tight end agenda. And I still think if he spent the prime of his career in a different offense, he would be thought of quite a bit differently because he's always been productive with not much volume. I mean, again, the Eagles have been one of the most run heavy offenses, and he's averaged 620 yards a season over the last 7 years. I don't know how many tight ends are averaging 620 over a 7-year period, but he's been productive in a situation that maybe doesn't favor him the most. And sure, he benefits from that rushing attack being really good, having so many other options that the defense is focusing on. But I've always thought he's a good player, and I think it's disrespectful to Dallas Goedert to have him that low with some of those guys above him.
I totally agree. I think it's insane. And I've said in the past that I think the thing that people get so annoyed about with Goddard is the fact that he misses 2 to 6 games a year. I actually think that you could argue, I think I will argue it since we won a Super Bowl. I think you could argue that Goddard kind of being a guy who could never fully stay healthy and could never fully actualize his potential actually helped the Eagles because he didn't get signed away for a big contract. You were able to keep him these last couple of years. You won a Super Bowl with him where he really was I think he was our leading receiver in that playoff run. I think it almost benefits us that he has those injury issues a little bit, because it keeps him reasonably priced and it keeps him able to stay around in a certain way, if that makes sense.
If you add up the receiving totals for all 4 years of Charlie Kolar's career,
yeah,
it doesn't reach Dallas Goedert's worst year in the last 7 years.
And I think the write-up was saying Kolar's like a truly elite blocking tight end, and Greg thinks there's upside since he's never been used as a receiver, like yada, yada, yada. Whatever. I think it's crazy, right? But like the argument against Goddard is that he's getting older and he's probably declining in the injuries. Travis Kelce is 53. He's 27 spots above him when he doesn't block at all. And Goddard, at least, even if his blocking did get worse last year, he is still blocking. He still can block. Like, I don't know. It would upset me if they moved on from Goddard. And it upsets me how I guess everybody's just accepting that it's happening again for the second straight year. And I'm going to make a prediction on, February 26th. I think I did this last year. Everybody said Goddard was gone. I'm saying today, I think everybody's reports again this year are BS. I think Goddard's staying, like pointed out with you guys, you and Johnny, and like you talked about on the show. And there is some conflicting reports. I do think that the way Howie structures contracts, it would surprise me if it would not help them to keep Goddard and spread things out.
Yeah. So, all right. That is going to do it for our tight end rankings. I hope you guys enjoyed the show.
Oh, wait, just a couple names I meant to throw out.
Okay.
We said Endries, we said Jolie. Really just three names. The three names that I wanted to throw out: Sam Roosh. He had 49 catches this year, 545 yards. Stanford, getting some update to buzz out there. Allegedly, the Bucs really like him. Josh Cuevas, only 1 year of production at Alabama, but he is a good athlete. And then the last one, Homer, have to throw him out there. Eli Raridan, really only 1 year as the guy at Notre Dame at tight end. He's kind of similar to Goddard in a college level, where Notre Dame's a school that very rush heavy and the tight ends are blocking more than they're receiving. But I think he has shown flashes, 32 catches for 482 yards, actually 15 yards per carry. He's 6'7", 252. So I do think that there is actually some upside with Raridan, and he probably could have made my honorable mention.
All right. Well, that is going to do it. Thank you guys for joining us for our tight end rankings. If you missed our quarterback rankings, you can scroll back and find those last week. Remember, don't be confused. We have 2 draft shows on the network this year. Birds of the Round Table has Dibes, David, and Ryan on it, and then Mark and I are doing our draft rankings separately on Chalk Talk. So we're going to try to mix those up so we're not covering the same positions at the same time. So Mark and I are jumping to defense next week. We're going to work through the defensive positions while those guys finish offense, and then we'll flip. So we are going to be ranking edge rushers next week. I think they might be on tight ends next week because they just did receivers. But regardless, we're diverging, so it won't be the exact same order. But you can see what they think. You can hear what we think. Follow along with us in the lead up to the draft. And, of course, it'll all culminate in some crossover shows and a draft show. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the draft content. Leave us some comments here. Let us know what you think, who some of your favorite players are. If you enjoy the episodes, 5-star ratings and reviews are certainly appreciated. I'll sound better next week, so that'll be a plus too. If this is your first show, I don't normally sound this bad, but we'll push through. Edge rushers next week. I hope you guys join us for that. Our recording schedule is going to be kind of back and forth, but we'll be recording during the days for a while. So follow us on Twitter. You'll know when we go live. I'm at Shane Half NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr., and we will catch you guys next time.